My name is Francis, and in this video, what I wanted to share with you is what the present moment actually is. Because I feel like a lot of people don't fully understand what the present moment actually is, and within reason, because how can we actually define what the present moment actually is? Because the present moment includes a lot of things in our reality, and it's hard to fully define what this actually is. And so what I'm going to be talking about in this video is what the present moment actually is and how we can define it as something, because I see this come up so much in the comments of my videos and my one-on-one clients. People say, oh, like once they realize what the moment is, they say, oh, I wasn't thinking about the moment. I wasn't thinking about the moment. But there's a problem with that statement, because you're not actually thinking about the moment, but you're directly becoming conscious of the moment, right? You're directly becoming conscious of the moment. So what does that actually mean? It means that there's thoughts, right? And these thoughts are connected to the moment, but these thoughts are not actually the moment itself, right? There's thoughts about the present moment. There's interpretations about the present moment. There's beliefs about the present moment. There's definitions about the present moment. But are these things actually the present moment? Are thoughts just something that are part of the present moment, right? Let's say there's the present moment. Are thoughts just a part of that? Are thoughts just a part of the moment? Is there the moment and thoughts are a part of that, and there's something else outside of those thoughts as well? How can we truly define what the present moment actually is? And if you're interested in consciousness and enlightenment and developing yourself spiritually, then these are valid questions to ask, because how can we truly define what the moment actually is? You know, is the moment just feeling into your senses? Is the moment just feeling into the sensation of your breathing, or feeling into your body, or noticing the sounds that you're listening to? Because most people don't even notice that. You might not even be noticing the sounds or the feelings in your body because you're too caught up unconsciously in your thoughts throughout the day, just daydreaming. That's the consciousness that most people are in, which is not good or bad. I'm not saying like that somebody's in a lower state of consciousness and that's a bad thing. It's just what it is. It's just what it is. Some people are so caught up in their minds that they can't even notice the simple sounds in life. And so that's one state of consciousness, which is the ego. You're absorbed in the mind. And you can step out of that and start to realize, okay, I don't have to be stuck in my thoughts. My attention and my focus and my energy doesn't have to be stuck in the thoughts, but I can actually shift that to a sound, for example, right? Or a feeling in my body, or just noticing sense perceptions that we didn't necessarily notice because we were too caught up in the mind. And so it's super important to actually question, like, how can we define what the moment actually is? And this is something that I was thinking about just today, which is why I decided to record this video. It's like, how can I actually define what the moment is, right? Is it a thought? Is it a feeling? Is it an emotion? Like, what is the moment? And so I'm going to break it down in a couple ways. This is a topic that I could be discussing, for 1 hour, 2 hours in the video minimum. This is like what 3 or 6 months of coaching would be doing for somebody to help them to go deeper into that state. So I'm going to try to explain this in a quick video, but bear with me here because this is a deep topic, right? Because one level of consciousness is the ego, right? The ego consciousness, where that's a word to represent you being unconsciously absorbed in the mind without even realizing it, right? So there's all these things happening in life. There's sense perceptions, there's feelings, there's emotions, and these things we're not tapped into fully because we're too caught up in the mind, right? We're too caught up in the thoughts. We're too caught up in what the mind is saying that we're not actually feeling or being present to the moment, right? And that's what I'm trying to say here, is that you're not thinking about the present moment. You are being or feeling the moment. And we'll get into that later, but I just wanted to throw that out there and plant that seed for you. So it's important to contemplate what the moment actually is. How can we define what the present moment is? And so once again, the ego is the first state of consciousness, right? It's the 3D, so to speak. When people say 3D state of consciousness, it just means that's a word that, it's a label that people can get attached to, in my opinion. 3D is just a label to represent a state of consciousness where you are unconsciously absorbed in your thoughts and you have a false sense of identity. Okay, that's just my opinion. This is my perspective, by the way. You got to question everything that I'm saying right now, because I don't want to come off as some teacher. You got to question what I'm saying. When it comes to consciousness and spirituality and finding the truth, don't even take my word for anything. Question it yourself. Question what I'm saying. Don't just believe what I'm saying. That doesn't really benefit you. I want you to experience these deeper states of consciousness that are possible if you put in the right work and the right techniques and the right strategies. But I don't want you just to believe me and then go back to your unconscious way of life. You want to be able to live your life actually from this space and question, okay, is what Francis is saying true, right? So once again, going back to the first state of consciousness that we're going to go into, which is the ego, or the 3D, or the unconscious state where you're stuck in your thoughts. I could also say you're unconsciously absorbed in the thought processes without realizing it. That's a nice way to put it. And when you're stuck in your mind in that way, you have a false sense of identity. And so all that consciousness, all that energy, and all that focus is literally trapped in the mind. Just trapped in the mind. It's all stuck up here. And when it's stuck up there, when you don't have, so when the awareness is stuck in the mind unconsciously, that's where all the attention is going, right? That's where all the attention is going, which means that there's a lack of attention in other parts of the moment, like what you're hearing, or the sounds, like the sounds, I already said that, or the feelings in your body, or what the sensation of your breathing, right? And it might sound cliche, but it's like, think about this for a second. We don't notice these sensations throughout the day. You don't notice that you're breathing throughout the day. I practice this, right? And I make sure that I do, but a lot of people don't. You don't notice this. You don't notice that you're following the sensation of, you don't notice the sensation of your breathing as you go throughout your day. You're just stuck up here. And we consider that a normal state of consciousness in society. We believe that's just normal. What we call thinking in this society is a state of consciousness that is completely dysfunctional and not serving yourself or humanity. Okay, what we call thinking is a dysfunction for your own self and others, right? And that's the state of consciousness that most people are in. What we call thinking is continually projecting into the past, continually projecting into the future without even realizing it, and not being connected to what's happening now. It's a delusion to a certain extent. And I hate to use that word. It might sound bold and it might trigger some people, but that's what it is. You're deluded because you're not actually connected to the moment, but you're attached to some thought about the moment. And so we can still go deeper. Like, what is the moment? Is the moment outside of your thoughts? Is the thoughts part of the moment? And we're going to get into that in a little bit, but it's things to question as we go deeper into this, right? How can we define what the moment is? And so that's the first state of consciousness, is that you may be stuck in your thoughts so much that you don't actually have conscious awareness of the present moment. Because when you're caught up in the ego and when you're caught up in the thoughts unconsciously, that's blocking you from fully being able to step into the present moment. And I haven't fully defined what the moment actually is, but it's definitely something to consider here, because most people don't even know that they're lost in their thoughts. They don't even know. And this is interesting to think about, because a lot of people don't question, okay, what actually is the moment? And so what I'm saying is that there's many levels to consciousness, and one of those levels is being absorbed in the mind without even realizing it, having a false sense of self with thought form. Because when you are unconsciously absorbed in your thoughts, you don't see your thoughts as what they are, which is just thoughts. You become those thoughts, right? You create an identity around those thoughts. And this is an issue because those thoughts are not actually who you are, but we get lost in those thoughts. And so that's the first level of consciousness, which is your ego. And it's interesting because when you're stuck in the ego, you don't actually have conscious awareness of certain things happening in the present moment, like, once again, what you're hearing, what you're feeling, sensations of your breathing, emotions, etc. Because the mind doesn't allow you to fully experience what is happening, right? And this can actually go against negative emotions as well, right? Like you have negative emotion and the mind and the ego won't actually allow you to fully experience that so that you can actually let it go. Because negative emotions are just indicators telling you, hey, like the feeling wants to be heard almost. Like, hey, just feel me, just feel the emotion. I just want to be felt. I just want to be heard is what the emotion is saying to a certain extent. And you want to just feel that. So when it comes to being present in the moment, that's one level, right? You can step out of the mind and step into the moment. Moment, in this case, I haven't gone deeper yet, just being sense perception so far. But is there another level to this? That's the question. Because when I'm asking you, what is the present moment? Most people don't even know that first state. Most people don't even know that you can actually step out of the mind and go into sense perceptions. And so the one thing that I will say before I go to the next level of consciousness is that feeling sense perceptions is not a thought. Okay, so you're not thinking about the moment, but you are directly becoming conscious of the moment as it already is, right? You are being, you're not doing anything. You're not necessarily doing anything that you weren't already doing, which is not a doing. You are just becoming conscious of what was already happening. And this is something that a lot of people don't get because they say, oh, well, I'm just thinking about the moment. No, you're not. You're not thinking about the moment. And I can understand why this can happen because you're mixing thoughts about the experience with the experience itself, right? But the experience is not the thoughts about the experience. And so that is a distinction to make, right? Thoughts, thinking versus the experience itself. Because these are two separate things. And so just stepping out of the mind and shifting your awareness to the sense perceptions can already bring a strong sense of peace that wasn't there before, right? That's part of the present moment, is first making that distinction between thinking and feeling, right? Let me ask you a question. If you close your eyes right now and you focus on the sensation of your breathing, okay, don't control your breathing, just notice the sensation that's already there. How do you know your hands are there without thinking about them or seeing them, right? And I don't expect a specific response from you, but I do expect that you get the answer not in the form of a thought. Because how do you know? How do you really know that your hands are there without thinking about them or seeing them? Honestly, just be self-honest here because you know that they're there, right? You know that they're there, but we just don't necessarily pay attention to that because we're unconsciously absorbed in our thoughts, right? So the hands are there, and it might sound simple and insignificant, but this is more powerful than you might actually think, because your hands and just noticing the sensation in your hands can already be a gateway to noticing something that you didn't notice before, right? Because a lot of us are unconsciously stuck in our thoughts. And so when we're in that state of ego, there's no conscious awareness of something as simple as feeling the energy in your hands. And the answer is a feeling, by the way. It's a feeling. You're not thinking about your hands. This is where some people say, well, I wasn't thinking about that before. Now I am. It's like, no, you're not thinking about it. You're noticing it directly, because that's the question. The question is, how do you know that they're there without thinking about it? You directly experience it and you directly become conscious of it, which is not a thought. And so in that same way, the sensation of your breathing is not actually a thought either, right? The sensation of your breathing is just a sensation, pure raw sensation. And this is what Eckhart Tolle always teaches, right? Can you just become conscious of a sense perception without actually labeling it as something? That's the key here. Can you directly become conscious of a sense perception, not for the next 3 weeks, not for the next month, just right now in this moment? Can you become conscious of a sense perception just raw, not labeling it as something, not defining it as something, not putting any label on that sense perception? It could be something you're hearing, right? Notice the sound in your room right now, right? Do you feel that there's a sound? Do you hear that sound? And this takes a sense of alertness, by the way, to just notice that sound, right? And not give it any label of any kind. This takes a sense of alertness. Like maybe a second ago, you were lost in your thoughts, and then you tell somebody, hey, just become conscious of the sound that you're listening to. And then they go, it takes a sense of alertness, it takes a sense of consciousness and awareness to do this. And so the question is, can you in this moment just notice the sensations of, the sounds that you're hearing? We'll stick with sounds for a moment. That's one way, without actually labeling it or understanding it or putting some kind of interpretation on it, right? And so that might be difficult for some people because they might say, no, my mind is getting in the way. Or maybe you get an experience of it for just a moment where the mind starts to calm down, and then the mind comes back in after, right? And that's normal, that's fine, that's how the mind works, because the mind has that momentum that it wants to keep going in. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, because this can already bring you closer to that state of consciousness where you're not in the ego, right? Because just noticing a sound and not actually putting a label on it is already the first step. And you might think, okay, well, my mind's getting in the way, Francis. Well, that's fine, because at least you're noticing that there is a difference between the sound and what you think about the sound, right? The fact that you already see that there is a difference, right? Because most people don't make that distinction in their experience between, a sound and a thought or interpretation about the sound, right? These are two separate things. Most people don't know that. It sounds simple, but you tell me, how deep can this really go? Because this can go a lot deeper than you might think. Because maybe you're already feeling the sense of peace and calmness that comes with just noticing a sound that you didn't notice before, right? That can be the first step, and you might even notice that. And that really does happen, right? If I'm feeling anxious, if I'm feeling negative, which doesn't happen to me a lot anymore, but occasionally that unconscious energy comes back up, right? Because that's the ascension process that we're going through. When that energy comes up, there's a sense of peace and calmness that comes just from noticing a sound. And this goes deeper, by the way. That's not the present moment. The present moment is not just noticing sense perceptions, right? It goes deeper than that. But that's the first step, right? That's the first step, is noticing a sound, noticing your breathing, noticing the sensation in your hands, noticing. That's why body scans are so powerful, right? That's why when you do guided meditations, people say, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. I feel so much more calm, and I don't know why. Well, that's exactly why. Guided meditations make you feel more calm, because you're stepping out of your mind. You're stepping out of the chatter of the mind. You're shifting the awareness, which is not a thought. That's not a thought. That is awareness shifting from the mind to a sense perception, where normally that awareness was trapped in the mind, but then it shifts out of the mind and goes to a sense perception instead, right? And that there's a sense of peace that comes with that. And that's just the first level. So the first step to stepping out of the ego and connecting deeper to the moment is just noticing sense perceptions, noticing how they are not actually thoughts, right? Noticing how a sense perception is not actually a thought. And so that can be really powerful already. But that's only the first step. That's only the first step. This can go a lot deeper, right? And this is just what I'm teaching you based on my experience, right? Based on what I've learned embodying the teachings of Eckhart Tolle and the Power of Now, which have completely shifted my life, by the way. Completely shifted my life. You should check that out. If you haven't read The Power of Now, read that book right now. Extremely powerful, okay? Extremely powerful to learning how to actually step out of your ego, okay? And so most people are stuck in the ego, and if I haven't mentioned it yet, the ego is when you're absorbed in the mind unconsciously. Another way to put it is the unobserved mind, right? It's a really good way to put it, the unobserved mind, because that's just what it is. And most people don't know that. They think the ego is this pride and this sense of, this sense of being macho and having that macho sense of self. And that's part of it. That's a result of the ego. But to go a step deeper, it's the unobserved mind. And so noticing sense perceptions is the first step. But then does this go deeper? Okay, so is that the present moment, right? Is noticing sense perceptions the present moment? Or does it go deeper than that? Or does it actually go deeper than noticing sense perceptions? Well, that's a great question, because it actually does go deeper. And the answer that I have for you is that what is the thing that is aware of the sense perceptions or the thoughts? And that's a seriously deep question. I'm asking you, who or what is actually aware of thoughts or sense perceptions? And that's a serious question to ask yourself, because if you ask yourself this question, well, you might say, me. Well, who is the me that you are actually referring to when you say me? Is it the voice in your head? Are you saying that the voice is observing the voice? Are you saying that the thoughts in your mind are observing the mind? Are you saying that the thoughts observe the thoughts? Or are you saying that the sense perceptions are observing the thoughts? Because we've already distinguished thoughts and sense perceptions in this video, right? So, interesting question, right? Interesting question. Who or what is observing the thoughts or the sense perceptions? If they are separate, which we already established that they are, and you confirm this for yourself, hopefully, by doing that exercise, how can we really know who or what is aware of that? Okay, and that's where the next level of consciousness goes. That's where the next level of being aware actually goes. Because when you ask yourself that question, who or what is observing that, any answer that comes up in your mind is not actually that thing. That is the witness or the observer, right? If you say me, well, that came from a thought in your head saying me. If I say Francis is observing the thoughts or, the emotions or the sense perceptions, well, that makes no sense, because Francis is the thought in my head. That's a human construct. That's a label that has nothing to do with who I am. It has to do with the avatar that I've created, right? The avatar self, the ego self, or the false sense of self. But the true self has nothing to do actually with the answer of Francis, because who is observing that, right? Who is observing the thought of Francis? Who is looking at that thought? So it's super important that you actually question who or what is actually observing thoughts and feelings and emotions. And a great question to ask is, who am I, right? And this is pretty sure it's called the neti method or something like that, where you can ask yourself, who am I, so many times that you start to realize who you are at a deeper level. And so the key to this question, if you're doing spiritual work, is that you're not trying to get an answer. You're not getting a specific answer. It's not like, who am I? And then you get the answer. It's like, no, that's not how it works. You realize who you are not until all that's left is who you truly are, right? Which is just pure awareness and pure consciousness. Okay, and that's the next level. That's the next level to being present at the moment. Yes, there's thoughts. You can step out of the mind and you can go into sense perceptions, right? and you can shift into, feelings, sense perceptions, emotions. You can step out of the mind unconscious chatter, the daydreams of the mind, and you can shift. And that's one level. But the next level is actually noticing the thing that has the ability to shift, right? Because there's this thing that shifts from the mind to the emotions or the feelings. Well, what is that thing? What can we call that? Right? What is that thing? And that takes a whole nother video in itself that I have to record that can take 2 hours. And that's what I call awareness and consciousness, right? The awareness and the consciousness is not actually the thing, right? And that's where true presence actually comes from, is not just thoughts, not just stepping out of the thoughts and shifting to the sense perceptions, but then noticing the thing that has the ability to notice the sense perceptions, right? And that might be confusing. I'm literally telling you right now to try becoming aware of awareness itself, right? Becoming aware of awareness itself. Becoming aware of the fact that you are a conscious being. You're literally turning your focus inwards when you do this. And so the mind might be confused and it's like, wait, what? Like, I don't understand. Like, I need more answers. I need more logic. I need more of an understanding, Francis. This is not making sense. This is confusing me. Even though I kind of understand, well, I'm kind of confused. It's because the mind will never understand this. Because the mind is a result of consciousness. The mind is a result of awareness that comes before thoughts and feelings. And so that is the answer to the next level of presence. Stepping out of the mind is the first way. The next level is actually noticing the awareness behind it all. Noticing the awareness that actually comes before any thoughts or any sense perceptions or emotions. And that can be really powerful because when you notice the awareness in the background, here's a great way to put it. In the foreground, we have form, right? We have thoughts, we have feelings, we have emotions. And it's important to understand how to step out of that first, right? Notice a sound, right? Notice a sense perception. But then the next level, that's the foreground, right? We have the foreground and we have forms that are in the foreground. Thoughts, feelings, emotions. This is what we call form. We call this form. But then in the background, we have awareness, or the formless part of who you are, the being, right? The consciousness that comes actually before any of those forms, right? And that's hard to explain and to articulate because I'm trying to articulate something that is not a form. So interesting, how do I actually do that? How can I be telling you that there is a form, a formless part of who you are that is not a form? Well, you got to think about that for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Don't take my word for it. You got to contemplate this for yourself and realize, well, okay, what actually is the thing that is experiencing this reality? Because is it the experience experiencing the experience? Is it the voice looking at the experience? How do I know that I exist right now? How do I know? Ask yourself, be honest here. Be honest with yourself. Really think about this. This is not something that takes one video. This takes many hours. And like, I've been meditating for almost 4 years every single day. I don't even know how many thousands of hours I've meditated at this point. And still, there's more work to do. Still, there's more work to do. Still, I haven't figured it all out. And I'm trying to figure out truth, what it actually is, because that's what I'm interested in. And I need to go a little bit deeper into this to fully be able to articulate this in a way that makes sense to everybody. But that's just the nature of this work, is that I'm trying to communicate something to you that essentially cannot be communicated, right? Because the formless part of who you are is not actually a form, right? It's the consciousness that comes before form. So the first level of consciousness, step out of the mind, feel into sense perceptions, feel into the moment, be present to the moment. That's what most people think. Most people don't even know that much. They don't even know that they can step out of that and then feel the sense perceptions. Okay, let's say that you're already there. Well, there's more. There's another level, which is the awareness in the background. It's noticing. So let's say, I'll try to give you an example here. Let's say you notice a sound, right? You notice a sound. The question is, can you also notice the awareness happening in the background of the sound? Right? That's the key right there. Can you notice the consciousness and the awareness? So in the foreground, we have the forms of the moment. We have sound. We'll use sound for a moment. In the background, we have the awareness of the sound, which is the formless part of who you are, which has the ability to actually be conscious of that sound, right? And that sound is not a thought. That's not a thought. You're not thinking about that. That's not a thought. That is directly becoming conscious of a sound or the form of a sound that arises into awareness and then comes out of awareness, because no form lasts forever. Nothing lasts forever, right? Nothing lasts forever. No form, no thing lasts forever. Nothing, no thing lasts forever, right? So you got to realize this. And so this is super, super key and a critical distinction to make when it comes to getting to that next level of presence, is to realize the formless part of who you are that comes before form. And so you're thinking, well, how can I become conscious of something that's not a form? Well, you can, as paradoxical as it sounds, because you'll realize the place where the forms arise from. An interesting thing, how can you realize that? Well, you notice awareness. You notice the thing that comes before thoughts, okay? And that is the present moment. That's really what the present moment is. That is the essence of connecting deeper to who you actually are beyond the ego, right? And that's what most people don't fully know and understand, which is why I'm here to break it down in the most tangible way that I possibly can. Because to define the present moment would literally be impossible, okay? You can't explain a sense perception to somebody. You can only feel a sense perception. You can think about a sense perception, but that thought is not the sense perception. Also, like, that can't be communicated. That can't be communicated. Also, there's the awareness that comes before the sense perception, and that definitely can't be communicated under any circumstance. And so this is the struggle that most spiritual teachers have, is to communicate this truth to people in a way that people are going to understand, right? Because how can you communicate a truth that cannot be communicated using words? And so if you don't understand this, well, be open-minded. Is it possible that there's a truth to reality that cannot be communicated using words? And that I just can't give you the answer? I can't just give you the answer, okay, what is the present moment? Here it is. Here's the answer to enlightenment. I just be open that I can't do that, because you have to do the investigation for yourself. I can guide you, right? I could probably record a 4-hour-long video on this subject on what is the present moment, but you have to do the investigation. You have to go deeper into the present moment. It's not my job. I can point you as a spiritual teacher, as a coach, I can point you in the right direction, but essentially you have to do the investigation for yourself and question, okay, how can I define the moment? What actually is it? Right? Is it a thought? Is it a feeling? Is it an emotion? What is the moment? Because if you really think about it, what is your reality made up of? It's made up of thoughts. It's made up of feelings. It's made up of emotions. That's pretty much what your reality actually is made up of, right? And obviously that's not everything. That's the surface level, right? That's the forms, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions. And that's pretty much what makes up your reality, right? It's thoughts, feelings, and emotions on a surface level. But is that everything? Is that all reality is? Is reality just thoughts, feelings, and emotions? Or is there something more? Is there something that comes before all of that? I'm telling you that there is, but you can't take my word for that. You have to make that investigation for yourself, right? You have to go deeper. That's why contemplation and self-inquiry and meditation, etc., is going to be powerful for you. And I can't just explain to you what the moment is in just one video. And so I can guide you, I can make you feel your sense perceptions, and you'll feel the sense of peace that comes along with that. But true peace and true contentment and fulfillment is becoming directly conscious of the truth of who you actually are that comes before thoughts, feelings, emotions, the awareness, the consciousness. Again, there's going to be many ways to explain this. I could call it the observer. I could call it awareness. I could call it the witnessing presence. I could call it presence. I could call it the watcher. I could call it the seer. I could call it the formless part of who you are. I could call it truth. I could call it God. Whatever you want to use. I could call it the universe. Whatever you want to use, it doesn't matter. That's the truth of who you are. And I'm using these words to point you to that truth, right? But these words are not actually the truth itself. And so the truth is not just a sense perception. That's what you can get lost into. I made this mistake before. I thought, oh, okay, that's all it is. You step out of the mind, you shift into your sense perceptions. That's it. I figured it out. That's the present moment. Is it really? Or does it go deeper than that? Does it go deeper? Because that's a serious question to ask. What is the present moment? This is something that goes so deep that you couldn't possibly imagine. This goes so deep, man. This goes so deep. You got to put in the work, and it's not even work because you start getting to a point on your spiritual journey where maybe you're already there. This is how it is for me, at least, where I started to develop a desire for the truth and uncomfort and connecting deeper to that essence of who I am. Even the pain that comes with that and the suffering and the ego and the unconsciousness and the darkness and whatever you want to use, it doesn't matter because you know that there's a true sense of peace at the other end of all of that, right? And so when it comes to knowing what is the present moment, you got to understand that there is something deeper than thoughts. There is something deeper than emotions. There is something deeper than sense perceptions. There is something that comes before all of that, and that's what I call pure empty awareness in this time. But even the word pure empty awareness is not the actual thing, right? And as you connect deeper to this true essence of who you are, that is where a true sense of peace comes, right? Because I know that no matter what happens in my life on the form level, on the external level, that I always have access to this sense of awareness, this sense of unconditional love, right? And that's what true love is love that is not based on condition. Love that is not based on some form or condition in reality. That is true, actual love, right? The unconditional part of who you are. That's another way to put it. The unconditional part of who you are, right? Formless, same thing. All these words are pointing to the same thing. But do you have the consciousness and awareness to be open enough to actually see that's what it is? And that's where you have to make the investigation. So the present moment is something that goes really, really deep. It's not just about noticing sense perceptions. That's the beginning. That's the first level. It's the first level. This goes in many, many levels, and you're going to have many awakenings on your journey. And it would be wise for you to stay open-minded how deep this work can really go. And what does this actually mean for your life? What does this mean for your job, for your career, for your relationships? What does this mean? To know what it means to be present, to know the truth of who you are. What does that actually mean for your life? What are the consequences and the ramifications of being connected to the moment? Because what happened in my life is that I couldn't continue any longer in a job, being in a program at school that I didn't enjoy. There's things that I had to let go of in order to actually move forward with having a deeper understanding of what the truth actually is, right? And when you go deeper, with the truth and the presence that comes before any form, that's going to radically change the way that you live your life, right? So it's a important thing for you to contemplate and self-inquire, like, what does this mean for my life, right? Because when you connect deeper to that state of bliss and peace, it's like, well, there's certain things that are not going to be in alignment with that anymore. And you're going to have to question, like, okay, what do I have to cling on to? What do I have to let go? And you'll find that a lot of things in your life you have to let go of as you become more present to the moment. And so this is the key, is to understand that you are gonna start realizing things as you go deeper into this work. And it's gonna be wise for you to contemplate what the consequences of that may be, and if this is something that you actually want to do. Do you actually want to learn what the present moment actually is? Because it starts off peaceful, and it is, don't get me wrong, this is where true peace comes from, but are you going to be willing to let go of the things that are not in alignment with that peace? Right? Because what does true peace mean? It means sometimes dealing with things that you don't want to deal with. And that sounds counterintuitive. It's like, wait, I thought that there's no pain and there's no suffering in this process. Well, you might have to go through some suffering to get to the peace, to realize that you didn't even have to suffer, and that the suffering was created by your mind in the first place, because you were attached to a false sense of self. And who is the one that is suffering? Who is the one that actually has consequences, right? You're changing your sense of self. What are the consequences of that? What are the consequences of changing who you are at a deeper level? Reformulating your identity. What are the consequences of that? And what does this mean for your life? So understand that the present moment is something that I could go deeply into for hundreds of hours, right? This takes like 6 months of coaching at the minimum to fully understand what it actually means to be present. Because I meditated for 4 years, and only in the last year, I started to realize that you can connect so deeply to the moment that your fears become a joke to you, right? And that's part of stepping out of the ego and into the sense perceptions, because when I'm connected to sense perceptions, there's no fear, because I'm just so consciously connected to the moment. I'm not even saying that in an egotistical way, like, oh, I have no fear because I'm so connected to the moment that now I am God. It's like, that's maybe how it sounds, but what I'm trying to communicate is that as you go deeper into this work, there's going to be certain things that are not in alignment with who you are anymore, and there's consequences to that. There's also pros and cons within those consequences, but being present to the moment is definitely one of the most powerful things that you'll ever learn in your life. Some of the most peaceful things that you'll ever learn in your life. And it's something that will completely redefine your way of life and what you choose to go forward in. And there's going to be a strong sense of fulfillment and peace. And there's so many benefits that come, but you have to be willing to do the work, to actually put in those hours and understand who you are. And you could realize it just like that. You could realize it. Maybe take a psychedelic, maybe you meditate for a little bit. You could get it quick. Sometimes it takes longer. I'm just outlining it in a way to make you understand how deep this awakening process can really go. It goes a lot deeper than you think. And so my call to action for you is to question, what actually is the moment? Who am I? Who am I at a deeper level? And don't expect an answer that comes in the form of a thought, because that is part of the moment. Is a feeling the moment? Is a thought the moment? What actually is it? Question this. Do some meditation. I'm working on a video right now that is explaining how to meditate. So if you're watching this, check out if that video is released, because that's also going to be an in-depth video. And I'm going to be putting in more work to give you more in-depth explanations of what it means to awaken and go deeper in this ascension process. So that's all I have for you today. If you like this kind of content, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, because I post a new video every single day. Hit that like button so more people can see this information and connect deeper to the truth of who they actually are. Okay, people can just start waking up to the truth. So I also created a free guided meditation MP3 that is designed to help you connect deeper to the moment, step out of those, thoughts, go into sense perceptions, but then once again, not just the sense perceptions, but then also realizing the observing presence in the background of all of it. So ironically, not so ironic because this is what I do, I created that meditation specifically designed to help you connect to the moment. And I think that meditation will give you a more clear understanding of what I was explaining in this video. So that's all I have for you today. Once again, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell so the videos can actually pop up on your feed. That's all I have for you today. Have yourself a great day and see you in the next video.